Okay.
Introduce yourself.
I'll introduce myself. Actually, it's part of the slide presentation. So at the very beginning, I'll give a little bit about me, about Recorded Books, and apologies in advance if this sounds a little marketing-ish. I borrowed a lot of this from an internal marketing deck. So I'm not trying to sell you something, but if it sounds like it is, that's why. About me, born and raised here in Indianapolis. I'm an original South Sider. Grew up in Columbus, Indiana. Moved there in my teens. A Marion alum, Fishers resident since '04, and I've worked in publishing for the last 27 years. The last 24 with Recorded Books. Started with Recorded Books as a library sales rep in '99, and then moved into the content acquisition side of the business. In my job, I've collaborated with the likes of Diana Gabaldon, Dean Koontz, Alice Walker, and Dolly Parton. And some of the crime mystery writers I consider both colleagues and friends include Ace Atkins, Laurie King, Larry Block, Craig Johnson, Charlaine Harris, a lot of the old guard, and then just some little personal information: volunteer dog walker for the Humane Society for Hamilton County. Dedicated thorn in the side of Hamilton East Public Library Board lately because they've been really annoying me, pulling all the books from the teen section and trying to put them in the adult section. Recently appointed co-chair with Diane of Indianapolis bid to host VoucherCon 2028, and married 27 years to my wife Robin, father of 3 kids, Sophie, Jack, and Connor, ages 18 to 24. Little quick professional bio outside of what I do with Recorded Books. My debut novel was published by Rare Bird Books in 2016 by The Ticket Take the Ride. And just this past March, I signed a 3-book deal to publish a YA fantasy trilogy. So that's exciting. Thank you.
Got my interest.
Recorded Books at a glance, or should I say RB Media. RB Media is it's the largest publisher of unabridged audiobooks in the world. Catalog of about 65,000 titles. We have 12 audio brands publishing 8,000 new titles annually. Deep collections of a lot of genres: mystery, Christian fiction, sci-fi, fantasy. We're Pierce Brown. If you're a sci-fi person, we're Pierce Brown, Martha Wells, Tasman Muir's exclusive publisher. We're the exclusive publisher of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit books. We just last year went to England and renewed the rights for another 10 years with the estate. So that's really nice. Obviously, I had mentioned earlier Diana Gabaldon. She's someone we've published. What?
Yeah, the camera.
Oh, sorry. I'm talking to the room and I should talk to the camera. Okay. I'll talk to the camera now. And as I was mentioning, just long, deep relationships with authors, agents, and publishers. And there will be time for questions too. And feel free to ask questions at any time. This is some of our affiliates, both in digital and library. You see in this slide on the retail side: Audible, Spotify, Audiobooks.com, all the usual players, Google Play, Apple. And then, of course, on the library side, libraries are Friends, Overdrive, Hoopla, Follett, Skillsoft, Baker and Taylor. For us, and the big thing I've always loved about being with Recorded Books is that I always walk into it, whether I'm walking into a meeting with an author or a publisher, I always say that we're the Switzerland of audiobook publishers. We remain firmly in the belief that it's our job to be agnostic. We don't want, if you sign with Audible or if you decide to self-pub via ACX, chances are you're going to be stuck in the Amazon vertical, and that's what they want. They want you stuck in that vertical, and we don't believe we do a lot of business with Audible. I'm not here to disparage Audible, but I understand that there's a lot of authors that don't want to be stuck in that vertical, and we offer those authors options. These are some of our brands, and we'll have a slide on each brand that we don't need to spend a whole lot of time on. And I'll just give you kind of a quick 1-sentence description of what these different brands are. some of our narrators. If you're big audio fans, you'll notice a lot of these. A lot of our narrators are professional. Most of our narrators are professional narrators that do this for a living. But a lot of the general consumers buy into the celebrity. So we have Billy Porter. That our recording was nominated for a Grammy this year. That was pretty exciting. Dolly Parton, Nick Offerman, Questlove, and then I love the. See if I can minimize. Hold on. Hopefully this doesn't. Yeah, there we go. Andy Serkis is a great story. He narrates our new recordings of The Lord of the Rings. During COVID, he was going on BBC Radio and narrating snippets of these recordings. That's not something he could legally do, and so we tried to tell them in the nicest way, you can't really do this, but if you want to come into a studio and have it professionally done, we'll pay you to do it. So what we ended up having were these classic recordings of The Lord of the Rings, and then Andy's new generation recordings. And choose whatever metaphor you want. Rising tide raises all boats. 1 + 1 = 3. But we've actually seen sales go up with both. So that's a really that. And again, I never thought I'd find a new opportunity for a book that I'd been selling for 24 years, but I did. Some of the authors, I've already mentioned several authors, but these are some of the ones we produce. You'll see probably a lot of your peers in this list. I'm just looking down at right now. We got C.J. Box, Charlaine Harris, I had mentioned, Craig Johnson, Laurie King, Bill Kruger, Donna Leone. So Ann Perry, rest in peace, Thomas Perry, Vern Michaels, a lot of authors, and some of our awards, a lot of bestsellers, a lot of Edgar Award winners. And then we also have deals with some of these independent publishers. So, obviously all the big five houses have their own audio publishers. But what you have are these large number of independent publishers who want to be able to tell their authors that we have our own audio house, and we exist for all these you see on this page as their audio publisher. Wiley, who has office, is actually here. OUP is a big partner. Entangled has become a very big partner. They're doing a lot of romance. A lot of the university presses, Princeton, Yale is not on here. Harvard's on there. Chronicle has become a big publisher. That's who published the print version of the Dolly books. Soho, excellent mystery press. And then right above it, Mysterious Press, our old friend Otto's publishing house. Otto Penzler, I think most authors would say Otto. And then here's just a sampling of some of our other things. We do audio originals. We own a graphic audio company which specializes in the multicast dramatic with sound effects audio, kind of a different, type of audio presentation than our traditional, as we say in the contract, single voice, non-dramatic, unabridged audio. This is going through a quick description of our different brands. Recorded Books is the flagship of RB Media. That's who I started with in '99. It was founded in '79, and I've disputed this with my internal marketing team, this bullet. Founded in 1979 as the original audiobook publisher. Books on Tape was founded in '77, so I don't think we can say that. But maybe because they were acquired by Random and they're now independent, I don't know. Vast audiobook catalog, as I had mentioned, award-winning, and again mentioning several of the authors we produce, and you see some of their covers down there. Tantor. Some of you have probably heard of Tantor. They do a lot of mystery, and they also pick up a lot of the authors in the self-pub and indie space, which I know there's a lot of authors that look to that space in audio because they get overlooked in audio the same way they were getting overlooked in print. Very big. This is of the 6,500 titles we do every year. Tantor is responsible for about 4,000 of them. So they churn and burn. Highbridge, you might be familiar with Highbridge. They were the longtime publisher of the Prairie Home Companion books. They started in Minnesota, so they had that relationship. And our parent company acquired Highbridge and Tantor and merged them with Recorded Books and to create RB Media. Another bit, the largest independent audio publisher in the Christian market, Christian Audio, we also own. Ascent Audio is a bit, and let me know if I'm going too fast. Ascent Audio is our business imprint, graphic audio, as I had mentioned. A little additional tidbit about them. What we've also done with them is commission original script writers and have adapted graphic novels and comic books into original audio presentations. So that's, become its own thing as well. And big authors actually come, they'll have an idea that doesn't quite fit in the single voice, non-dramatic space. And they'll come to graphic audio and say, hey, I've got this idea. And Brandon Sanderson, Peter Brett, Ilona Andrews, Brent Weeks, Sarah Moss, some pretty big authors. Colorama is our political imprint. Colorama is a neighborhood in DC, if you're wondering where that word comes from. Boca Vivo is our Spanish imprint. We publish Spanish language audio in North America and in the world. RB Media Verilog, that's our German one. And then this is very new. I'm not a French speaker, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce it. Who would like to? It's phonetically it's Editions Thalim, and that's not it. With the accent on the three E's. I can't. I won't even attempt it. But that's very new. We launched it last month. And then our sister company during the pandemic, KKR. That's our private equity owners. You might be familiar with them. They're the literal barbarians at the gate. So that's the company that bought that started the whole private equity kind of rush. But they're very good owners, very interested in investing in this space and building content. And a couple years ago during the pandemic, they acquired Overdrive. And so we now, in addition to being the largest, having the largest catalog, we are a sister company to the largest library digital audio publisher. This is the big overview, probably something that you'd be more interested in as mystery writers. Mentioned our catalog size. At the height of our CD business, actually in the early 2000s, Recorded Books was the #1 unabridged audio publisher in the world, with audiobook revenues and libraries exceeding Books on Tape, Baker and Taylor, and Ingram combined. I used to get mad at Library Journal because they would have an audio bestsellers list, and you would look in the fine print and they would say, this is the numbers we're tracking via Baker and Taylor. And I was like, I know for a fact those aren't the top 10 best-selling books, because these are our top 10 best-selling books. And I know we sell more than Baker and Taylor into the libraries. But then, with the acquisition of Overdrive by KKR in 2020, Recorded Books folded its very large library division, RB Digital, into Overdrive. We now no longer have a physical, an internal physical plant in terms of producing physical product. We outsource all our CDs, and there is still a robust CD market in libraries. Digital audio has grown by double digits every year for more than a decade, which far exceeds print, ebook, any subsidiary right in publishing. Audiobook revenues totaled about 1.67 billion last year, up from 25% in 2020. Last year, nearly 74,000 audiobooks were released compared to 7,200 in 2011. I like this. When I got into the business in '99, the audiobook business was about a $250 million business. And now it's, as I said, 1.67 billion. We've seen projections, mostly from the Spotify CEO, of audio growing in the next 5 to 10 years to being as big as 15 billion. we do appreciate Spotify. I refer to them as the 7-pound gorilla in the room here, jokingly. But what I mean by that is that it's always good to see more competition enter the market, and especially with Spotify and Apple and Google and Libro.fm and Kobo. More options for authors means more options for consumers, which, in the long run always seems to work out on behalf of the authors and the consumers. Crime mystery is a unique genre in audio. It does not over-index on Audible to the extent of romance and sci-fi. So what we see is a large and loyal group of readers and listeners in libraries and in indie bookstores. I was just having dinner with Laurie R. recently, when she was named actually it was about a year ago. Man, time flies. So she was named the Grand Master at the Edgar Awards last year. And I was sitting at her table and I shared with her that her last book in the Mary and Sherlock Holmes mysteries, Back to the Garden, net over 60% of its audio revenue in libraries. Comparatively, a typical sci-fi fantasy novel might net over 90% of its audio revenue on Audible. And that's just because that over-indexing comes largely from the fact that a lot of sci-fi fantasy readers were the tech geeks, the earlier adopters, that they were downloading audiobooks 10 years before the general consumer even knew what audiobooks were. Emerging players, markets, and trends, Spotify, as I had mentioned, foreign language, I had also mentioned, but AI is something we're all concerned about. And then, of course, indie self-publishing, which I only touch on a little bit here because we don't really dabble in that space too much. But, an author's options when they're looking for audio. Do I go wide or do I stay in the Amazon vertical? What are my options if I decide to self-publish? And, it's ACX, Findaway Voices, Authors Republic. Those are the three main ones. Full disclosure, Authors Republic is also a sister company of Recorded Books, and I'd love it if you went there. And then, well, yeah, that's a quick overview. I talk about crime and mystery. I had mentioned that about Laurie King. Recorded Books, in fact, is now riding a little bit of a hot streak. We have a hat trick for Grandmaster. We now have 3 in a row. So Charlaine Harris was the 2020 Grandmaster, or 2021. Laurie King was 2022, and then we published Joanne Fluke. So that's 3 in a row for the last 3 Edgar Awards. And again, that's of all the genres, we publish in audio. Crime mystery might be my favorite, just because I love the genre itself, but I also love the authors. Going to VoucherCon is the most unique writing conference you'll ever go to, because the authors are immediately accessible and immediately ready to talk about books. And it's just great. They're generous with their time and their advice. And that's, I'm glad I could come to this and give back a little to the authors who've given me a lot more just outside the office. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I'd be happy to take some questions.
Here's one, Crystal.
Yes.
Some graphics that you seem to have on the computer, right?
Yep.
I don't understand that.
Okay.
Now, if I understand what I have down for the book, which you work for,
Correct.
as what?
The director of acquisitions.
Oh. It is a flagship of RB Media.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm trying to understand, visually. You also mentioned
A lot of the edge. So yes, correct. Okay, so when a book is sold, there are various rights
Right.
Yes. Yeah, so we've got hardcover, paperback, serial, foreign film, audio is where I come in, and I negotiate for the audio rights of the book. Sometimes the print publisher insists on retaining those audio rights. And my job is to negotiate with agents and say, look, I would prefer you sell me those directly. Because if you don't sell me those directly, I might buy it from that print publisher and you're only gonna get half of it.
And
The recordings. Yes. Yeah. So you have, if you look at the pie, the biggest are recorded books, Audible Studios, and then the big fives internal audio houses. So PRH Audio, SNS Audio, Harper Audio, Hachette Audio, and Macmillan Audio. Those are the five. So Macmillan Audio, for example, would publish all the books that are under Minotaur, a big mystery list at St. Mark's. And so we're always, vying for audio rights within those pies. Now, where you hear those names and where it might get confusing is that I had mentioned recorded books being agnostic and not wanting to get authors stuck in any one vertical. Audible Studio, there's two different types of Audible, which the general consumer gets sometimes confused by. There is Audible, the digital vendor, and Audible Studios, the publisher. So Audible distributes all of us, but they also publish some of their own books. We're in fact, our catalog, 65,000-ish, makes us, we're bigger than Audible on Audible. So we have more titles than they do on Audible, which is kind of cool. A little fact. And then PRH would be behind us. We're about twice as big as PRH. Penguin Random House. That's what those initials stand for.
track.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh, no.
That was
That's a lot of info I threw at you.
recorded books.
Mhm.
An agent comes to recorded books, or you pursue an agent.
Yeah.
You getting rights to the audio.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, now, this is what we do. Okay, I've got down that part, because we are independent. I'm not. Hi,
Yep.
we're independent, insofar as, self-publishing.
Mhm.
With all our rights and our ownership. Now, you had down here, I had down here, the Authors Republic. Is it right?
Yep.
That is we, or branch under,
RB Media.
Okay.
Yep.
that would, for us, would be of interest to us going to.
Yes. They would take your books and they would match your books up with narrators, just like ACX. No. Yeah. So yeah. And all three, I mean, and it all depends, like they all have their strengths and weaknesses. I mean, ACX is, it's underneath Audible. And so they'll be a great marketing engine. If chances are they'll market it better and get it to more people in their vertical. But again, it's just, I know a lot of people who just kind of philosophically don't want to go, under Amazon. And then that's what Find Away Voices now, but they're Find Away Voices is now owned by Spotify. So Authors Republic is the only true independent self-publishing audio house now.
Now, I've got a question. I've got the rights back from my publisher to all the books that were out there.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm kind
Yep.
of, okay, what do I do? Now, those were, there was publishing in Target and all, but I've got the rights back.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Now, if I wanted to get those on audio,
Yep.
would directly, or do I have to go to an agent to go to these houses? I've been published.
Not to Authors Republic. You could, you could do that. But to get them, it all depends. Audio is this, you're fighting the same battle with audio that you would fight with print and self-pub. If you want to self-pub the audio, it's very easy through ACX, Find Away Voices. Yeah.
I'm just doing this. We want our.
Yep.
And previously published, not self-published. I have all the rights. But suppose I want to relinquish the audio rights.
Send me an email. It's on the very last, yeah, it's on the very last. Okay, B Sweany, BSWEANY. B Sweany, BSWEANY at EANY, a little different. Yeah, at recordedbooks.com.
Okay, I'm wondering about that, thank you.
On chat, Mary Bishop had a question. Do authors have much input into who voice their books?
They can. It all depends. If it's a big, it's usually just depending on what we paid for it. If we paid a lot for the rights, then more often than not, narrator approval is part of that deal. For the smaller deals, some, like if I sit down and do a big content deal with a small press, and they're like, we want this, we want this, we want this. And with that, it's like, these are a lot of books we're acquiring. I can't grant you these levels of permissions on every title, just because it's too time consuming for me.
I think I heard you talk about the teen market.
No.
And you said that you had published some.
YA Fantasy Trilogy coming out. So it's going to be whatever the first Tuesday in March of next year. It's like March 5th, 2024. Sure. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Are you gonna make me be technologically adept? Because I struggle at that. Okay, let's see.
Is it like right now that little you and your sheet?
There, how's that? Is that better? Let me see. Now I'm gonna look at myself and my angle, and it's like, is that what you were looking at the whole time? No. My wife stuff, yeah. So this I signed the deal in March. The publisher is Third World Studios, which is distributed by Simon & Schuster, and they do a lot of board games, comic books, graphic novels, but they're looking to really branch out into prose, and so I'm one of about 5 that they've signed. And it's a 3-book deal, which is exciting and scary. but it's kind of a send up on Arthurian mythology. I play with it, but it's set in contemporary times. So I loved Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and so it has that kind of self-aware, self-deprecating teen angst, or fantasy elements existing as metaphor for teen angst. So you have this main character, Rosemary, who finds that she has these unique abilities. Turns out she is the next in line of this curse called the lustborn tide, the curse of the lustborn tide, that says children conceived in lust are imbued with certain abilities. And she finds out, so she finds out that her parents in this sleepy Maryland suburb are actually Lancelot and Guinevere, who've been banished to American suburb as punishment for their adultery. And again, that's the tongue-in-cheek humor, as I was talking about. Being banned to a 21st century American suburb was seen as a greater punishment than death. But and I have and it turns out that the kind of stocky, odd 16-year-old foreign exchange student from Wales is Merlin, who's aged backwards to a 16-year.
Be a popular
Yep. Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it depends. There's always new trends, and YA it seems like yeah, it it punches over its weight class for sure in terms of and what I mean by that is that you see high advances, you see the books everywhere in bookstores, but it's you know you don't beyond those top tier authors, you don't necessarily see uh the big revenues or the profitability that you see in just a decent mid-list mystery. And so it is definitely popular, maybe not as popular as you might think, just because YA middle grade picture books, the big challenge for that genre has always, and this is nothing revelatory, the big challenge is that they're the only categories of books that depend on someone else buying the book for the consumer. It's like you're promoting this, but are the kids seeing it? It's so you have to find a way to get parents interested or get the kids interested enough that they tell the parents to buy the book. So that's the real challenge that nobody stops to recognize.
Who's doing the audiobooks?
Well, actually, it's a surprise. I can't say yet, but we're talking to a former child star who's never done an audiobook. But anybody in the YA fantasy space, if I mention her name, people will freak out. So, well, I should be able to say, I don't know, soon. We're checking her schedule and we'll see. But I don't want this video to somehow find out. It's like, so for now, it's secret. Hey,
Well, love you, Terry, by the way.
thank you, man. Outsiders. Yeah.
You are, very long. So my question is, how do you handle indie authors and small press authors who write cross genre? So like you have someone who writes mysteries, but also science fiction, fantasy,
We have many authors. Yeah. A great example of that. And you might be familiar with her because she does exactly that. Well, there's two that come to mind there that you always see them talking at all the mystery conventions. Joelle Charbonneau. She lives in Chicago. She does that. She writes mystery and then we'll turn around and write like a Hunger Games type book. And then Alex Segura. He's another great one. He's a mystery writer, but he was former publisher of Archie Comics. He does. So we see it's I'm glad you asked that because that's actually something we see in mystery, that there is an interesting crossover between mystery writers who they write mysteries for their adult audience and then they'll go and write even like middle grade fantasy, and it's so yeah, and we handle those, just like the way we handle any other author, I mean, I'm in that boat myself. I wrote my first book that was published in 2016 is a semi-autobiographical World According to Garp literary fiction novel. I mean, it's 612 pages. I call it therapy on a page. It was me just kind of working out all my demons but yeah, I welcome crossover. We have again in the mystery spec going back. What was it, 10 years ago? And Peter Abrams' agent came to me and said, "Hey," and he's middle grade fantasy writer. And she handed me a manuscript. She's like, "Peter is writing this mystery series where the main sleuth is the dog, and he's going to write it under the name Spencer Quinn." And yeah, and Stephen King loved it. It's a great series if you haven't read them. And because the dog is the dog. Like he'll be like, imagine a sleuth trying to solve a crime, and then right in the middle of it, he gets distracted, by something. Yeah, just walking by. Like, and so it's very hilarious. Chet and Burn. Yeah, I was like playing the Chet and Bernie. Yeah, doggone it. Yes. And so yeah, my long answer to your short question is yeah, we see it a lot.
I need your business card.
Okay, I don't have one. Yeah, those are old, but yeah. Yeah, my email's on the last thing of the slide, and we can share. I'm sure you'll share it with all the yeah.
Now, ask this question, okay, suppose, one does business, one say one, I don't know. There's not, I write romances and 10 books that I enjoy everything, but those are the ones I'm talking about. Okay, suppose that I did a contract with a major author, let's say that you guys, to have those done in audio. Then self-publish, mystery suspense or cozy mysteries and stuff, that they're doing suspense. And then went to, what's the name,
Authors Republic.
Those are two, and we didn't know they were the same people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, you could do, and sometimes we have, for example, say a traditionally published mystery writer comes to us and and we do a deal for their front list. Oftentimes I'll do the deal with them for the front list. And then Tantor, who I mentioned, is kind of a churn and burn, does a lot of titles. I call them my real-time audio publisher. Like here's a book that just got hot on Amazon. We'll publish it we could publish that in about 8 weeks. Tantor can do it in about 4 weeks, So we'll do the front list and Tantor will acquire the back list. Yeah. Yep.
The audiobooks, my writing partner and I rewrite a cozy mystery series geared towards 50 and up, and we say, I guess, although younger people read it, we really get for older. So I'm just saying, what are the statistics insofar as that age group doing audiobooks? Is that high or is it not?
I would say it's admittedly lower cozy mysteries. And again, just as the sci-fi fantasy readers were early adopters, the cozy readers were the late adopters. They're still checking out books on CD from the libraries. And so unless it's like a category busting cozy writer, like a Joanne Fluke, you'll see some of those front porch tea sipping books just they languish a little more.
Instead of doing audiobooks at that age.
Yep, you never know. I mean, it's we have a content deal with Kensington, who's like the largest publisher. Yeah, they're the largest publisher of a lot of categories, cozies, rom-coms, a great African-American fiction list. I mean, I'm good friends with Mary Monroe. She's awesome. And she is. Yeah, get her telling Terry McMillan stories out of class. That's great. No, but that whole group of authors is great. Carl Weber. But yeah, cozies are
And that's the thing to the printed publishing though, that's just your opinion, I'm sure though. You know more about the audio. You pursue that.
It wouldn't hurt to pursue it. Like if there's a genre that would struggle to carve out its own patch of land in the audio landscape, it would be backlist cozy. I mean, that's my short. That's the question, is that if you're going to be spending anywhere from $200 to $400 per finished hour for a recording, it might not be cost effective. So, and that's that's probably a good number. Just, ours is about $400 per finished hour. So that's a little on the high side. But if you're thinking about, well, should I do this? Well, this book would be an 8-hour recording. There's your math, probably about $2,000 to record that. So yeah, you have to do that calculation if it's worth it.
I don't have any.
We don't? Okay.
The person read it.
Mm-hmm. No, in fact, Recorded Books was the original SAG-AFTRA house. We were the first signatory to the contract. We've been a union shop since the late 70s. And we are the only audio publisher that can say that. And so we're always on their side, but we pay every year. Authors get health care because of companies like Recorded Books, because we pay into it. And we're on the writer's side right now, and it's a interesting world right now, because we've got, what you may not know is it's going to be, this is 1, 2, 3 coming up. SAG-AFTRA's coming up for renewal, and the Directors Guild's coming up for renewal, like all within months of one another. And that's going back to the AI thing that I talked about. And I have no interest in being diplomatic. AI is terrible. It's terrible for authors, terrible for creators. It's just a way for publishers to not pay writers. That's what it is.
The writers. Strike,
It doesn't affect us, because authors are kind of separate from that. Authors are kind of like general contractors for book publishers. But so it has an effect. Well, I take that back. It's affected us a little bit, where we're seeing book properties, suddenly the movie houses aren't they're not taking submissions right now. My publisher, I signed my book deal in March. He had it out to 3 different streaming services, and one was pretty interested in it, and then everything went dark. Yeah, the writer's side. So they're just not, they're not only are the writers not writing, but there are people within this space that don't want to be perceived as not being on the writer's side either. So that, and it's this whole thing now. And great example, one of our big books we just published was the newest Oprah pick. So Abraham Verghese's Covenant of Water, wonderful book, read it. Oprah said it's one of the 3 best books she's ever read. Yeah. And so she was really, and Harpo, they're really interested in it, like we're interested in it, but we don't want to talk about our interest in it, because they, Oprah and Harpo are they're like, we want to be on the side of the writers, and that's great. And yeah, that's the challenge, really.
That's fine. You're saying that some of the streaming services and stuff, there are people who don't want to step on the writers' guild's feet and so things.
Oh no, the people. So what you have, my agent, my publishers are talking to kind of go-betweens, and so these are like scouts, and the scouts are bringing the stuff to Amazon, to Netflix, to Hulu, and the scouts are not wanting to do any of that right now. It's just because they're not taking, because until this writers' strike is resolved, there are terms within these contracts, that like material terms that are affected by whatever new negotiation are in these contracts. AI is the big thing in the strike, is that the writers want kind of a fundamental control over AI for the term of these new deals. So it's like, let's sign our new, whatever, 10-year deal. And this is how we're defining AI rights. Whereas the streamers are saying, no, we want to be able to renegotiate that on a year-to-year basis. That's the big sticking point. And the writers are like, that gives us no, yeah, thanks for 365 days of protection,
Question, how does it work with the libraries that have the audiobooks link and you can just go through? Do the writers of those books get anything?
So when in a library digital service, whether that be Overdrive / Libby or Hoopla, what happens is a library will pay for basically a license to that title. And so they might have it they'll have it for usually the term of license of the audiobook. And so it could, for let's say 7 years. And they will pay a fee for that copy. And it's a pretty high fee. It's usually like $50 as opposed to $14, on for a retail copy. And in return, you see a percentage of that just the same as you would if it were sold as a retail audiobook. You have a percentage you collect on the sale of the library audiobook. That the initial point of sale is when you see yours. But then the library book itself is, every time somebody downloads it, it's locked. So it's not like it's not like a streaming service where people are going into the libraries and just all downloading. Like if somebody goes to Hamilton East Public Library right now and wants Covenant of Water, chances are they aren't going to get it. Somebody's got it. And it acts like a checkout. After 21 days, the book is disabled on your device and it becomes available again to check out from the library. So they're they're defining it along the lines of a physical book. Yeah, which makes sense.
This has changed, but she was saying that like if you've checked it out on this was when they were using MP3 players, and then you didn't get around to reading it and you rechecked it, they were billed for 2 users or something like that. So they only can use.
There might still be, there was attempts by several of the print publishers. I want to say maybe Harper and Macmillan, where they tried to put kind of like an arbitrary number of checkouts or something. Most publishers have kind of gone away from that now, to a simpler system. Yeah, that's how or how several publishers have approached that. But again, I think it's.
You feel bad if I didn't get that and had to read.
And another thing is these libraries, again, they're paying for individual copies. They're not going in and buying the whole library. So it creates, the term we use in the industry is that it creates friction. And the friction is there by design because we all want patrons to become consumers. That's the goal of publishers. So it's necessary friction. And even now, Spotify, I think Spotify's kind of doing that, right? It seems like right now they're just kind of testing the waters on the retail side of things, seeing, what price point a consumer is comfortable with. They're doing their due diligence. If the way Audible goes to market is the correct way, if there's alternatives, and it's interesting. We'll see what the future brings.
Random audiobook person having for like way before. One of the things that makes me a little crazy is that, so you mentioned Mary Wells and her whole
Murder bots.
love.
I love them too.
For as long, you don't need to pay full price for this.
That's a great
Except for now.
Yeah.
Like, look,
See? And a patron has become a consumer.
okay. Less than 6 hours.
You just identified, and again, goes back to me talking about the difference between in genres and how I talked about sci-fi over indexes on Audible, because you have these readers and listeners that are just they've been downloading audiobooks like you since before audiobooks were cool. And what we found is that most consumers on Audible are very price sensitive. So for people who aren't familiar how Audible Listener works, Audible Listener is their subscriber service. You pay $14.99 a month and you get one free credit for a book, something like that. And then yeah. So she does the crazy. So I'm talking about the base. Yeah, the base package. So what we see with most genres is consumers are very price sensitive. They won't burn a whole credit on anything less than a whole book. And so it'll be like so the Ann Perry will bust the doors out. Then Ann Perry's Christmas novella comes out and our sales are way down. Sci-fi fantasy is actually the exception to the rule. We've done very well with Martha Wells because that consumer generally is like, just sell it to me. You know, Patrick Rothfuss came out with a novella spinoff once, I think, of his King Killer Chronicles, and that went like crazy. So that's the one genre that's not price sensitive, but mystery, romance, yeah. If you put anything less than a 6-hour book out in audio, you'll see the sales difference. And again, I'm paying the whole credit. I want the whole book.
Yeah, the guy who has to read Martha Wells series or robot series.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's funny you say that, because especially with avid audio book listeners, they attach themselves to narrators, and they absolutely know who. Like I'm watching the series finale of Better Call Saul, and I get a random text from a librarian. Oh my God, Barbara Rosenblatt is the judge, because Barbara Rosenblatt, she narrated all the Amelia Peabodys, and people love her.
Yes.
And I'm watching what was it on Disney Plus? I'm watching Moon Knight, and Moon Knight, who's this mercenary, his wife is trying to track down these clues of these Egyptian artifacts, and she calls her guru for Egyptian artifacts, and it's Barbara Rosenblatt. And I'm like, I'm like, that's an audiobook shout out. My mom's like, what are you talking about, nerd? And I'm like, she's the narrator of an Egyptology audiobook series by Elizabeth Peters. I just saw Barbara like 2 months ago at Audio Publishers Association conference, APAC. And she and we go, like, I met her when I was a library rep in '99. We had Indiana Library Federation ILF conference here, and she was the guest speaker. And she comes up to me and she's like, Brian, we need to go to that deli on the south side of downtown. I go, Shapiro's? She goes, yes. I've heard everything about it. And Barbara Rosenblatt is a New York Jewish, queen. And when we're going there, then we get there and I'm like, this is really good food. She goes, I love this food. She goes, but we need a hat now. And I go, why? She goes, George Gordell's birth name is Shapiro. And that's another one of the big narrators in the audiobook space. So my first memory of Barbara Rosenblatt was hunting down a Shapiro's hat for her. Yeah. And yeah, and Gen Con's here, and I always see a lot of authors that in the audio space, and hopefully, VoucherCon will be here in 5 years. Yeah.
So Bridget said, love Patrick Rothfuss.
Yep, he's awesome. I think they announced maybe something new recently. I don't know. I mean, I don't know when the novel's coming out. Everybody, he's kind of like almost has an aura of George R. Martin. You talk to some of his fans and they're just like, when's novel number 3 coming out? And they always ask me like I know these things, and sometimes I have insider's information, but I don't with this. But
a big fan of audiobook, I've tried them recently. So my question is, does a place like Audible or recorded, recorded books, a stable of, narrators, or they just pick whoever?
I mean, I think every book publisher has a core group of narrators they've worked with for a long time and are comfortable with, but nearly all I mean, they're working actors, so they go everywhere, you know.
No, I don't read the narrator, the sell of the books, but I've read, I can't think of a series, just love the guy who's reading, but then I've read another that voice just irritated the crap out of me.
Yeah, it can be hit and miss. And the thing with Audible is you need it to be hit, because once it dips below 4 stars, it falls out of that mysterious Amazon marketing algorithm. And it's as you probably know, reviews, stars. That's what translates into visibility on Amazon. A book will not get traction if it doesn't get reviews and doesn't get good reviews. So you want that 4 stars, and you want people leaving reviews, and that's what gets it going. And so I think we're very cognizant of bad readers, because it hurts our sales.
I have a question. Mine is about, what's it? Oh, wait a minute. And I don't know who can answer, I assume you can. When you have a contract with, I'll say the recorded books and stuff, is it a specific, exclusive audio contract without us, let me say, no problem, have problematic rights? In other words, one of the things I know we have come in contact with the playwrights as well, is that something, if our play is done, so I'm saying if the audio is done, okay, that's like that. Some of the contracts we run up against saying that play can be done for 3 years, so one.
Yeah.
So when I'm asking about the audio, if you get the rights to an audiobook, are you saying, does a contract from your company say, okay, we got the audio rights, you can't sell the visual rights for it, so, you see what I'm saying?
Yep, we our audio contracts are intentionally vague around media, because we want to hold on as much as we can, but it's not, it's 7 years. It's an exclusive for the audio rights. Yeah. All we have is the audio rights, but the audio rights covers quite a bit of ground. So, for example, if I buy the unabridged audio rights to that book, for the next 7 years, people have to come to us to, like, it's not something where you're like, well, I'm going to go on the radio and read 20 minutes of it because I'm the author. Can't do that. Yeah.
Rights for
Please separate. Dramatic is separate from us. Correct. Yeah. Well, that's a good example. Where we've run into that gray area is with our company that I mentioned, Graphic Audio, that does dramatic multicast recordings with sound effects. We've learned now we call it enhanced multicast audio, just because the word dramatic, the moment you put the word dramatic in a contract, Netflix, Amazon, Disney are like, nope, you don't have those rights, and so it's certainly not our intention with a dramatic multicast audio to infringe upon dramatic rights. So we've changed that word, because I think we can agree that just a book that has sound effects and more than one narrator is not a TV series on Amazon Prime. But that's, those are some of the things you need to be aware of, to both protect the author's rights and respect the you know, the movie houses and all the creators in the, you know, in the chain.
The person is reading the book. I'm not, my books are about mostly Black women.
Yep.
And I'm one of Black
Oh.
women. You
Oh,
guys step down.
100. Well, so here's a little personal story. When I was with Recorded Books in '99, was in the field for a year, and I was going into everywhere from Oxford, Indiana to Gary, Indiana, into all these bookstores or in all these libraries. And then I came to our president and I said, there's audiences that we're missing, and I think we need to do this and this and this. And so that's where Christian audio came from. It was actually back then, it was Recorded Books Inspirational, which led to eventually our acquisition of Christian audio. But then also I came up with the idea for Griot audio. And Griot audio is our dedicated fiction imprint for African-American literary writers, mystery writers, and we only, you know, have African-American narrators. We only have, in our Spanish, we actually have, there's Latin Spanish narrators. There's what's the other Catalonian Spanish narrator. I mean, like there's different dialects within Spanish audio. So we're super predict. And you know what we found? Another thing is that bless you, is that we found in the romance genre. You had mentioned you were a romantic suspense writer. In the romance genre, if the book was this third person, you know, omniscient narrator, we learned that the romance writers liked men reading the book, not women. The romance listeners, you know. And we just found that out one day. You know, that somebody was like, yeah, and it was just a random customer comment that, would you ever, you know, and we did it, and there's a lot of positive response. I mean, there's plenty of romance novels related, because there's a lot of first person romance novels that you have to have. But we found that, you know, third person, that there was an audience for male narrated romance novel. And we do, I mean, everything from to use your example again about authentic narrators. We publish Kensington's Urban Books list, and that stuff, that's not front porch cozy stuff. I mean, like the Carl Webbers, the Mary B. Morrisons. I mean, it's pretty. It can be pretty raunchy. Yeah, and but the genres are far and wide. But yeah, with it, narrator is the utmost important. That's Recorded Books was founded by a traveling salesman who didn't like the monotone voices of the federal government's talking books program. That's what we were literally founded on, the principle that it begins and ends with the narration. And nonfiction, memoirs, business books where it's tied to the author, you know, I usually get a question, well, what about authors reading their stuff? And I always say, when it comes to fiction, George Lucas never wanted to play Han Solo. And that's what I tell novelists. You do you, let the narrators do what they do best. And most of the time, sometimes there are grand exceptions. Abraham Verghese reads his new one, Covenant of Water, and it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard. But in general, you know, I advise fiction writers to stay away from the recording booth.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Is it? Okay, you're welcome, everybody. Thank you.